A very good day to everyone. My name is Faisha and I would like to introduce my group members, which is Muhammad Saifuddin, Nik Anisha Sophia, Shazwani Amni, Asna Shazana and Atira Idris. We are here as we would like to present our group project for MAF653.
Hi, I'm Atira Idris. For question 1, we analyze the regulatory governmental engine behind Malaysia's Sukuk market by focusing on the roles of Bank Negara Malaysia and the Securities Commission Malaysia. At its foundation, Malaysia's Sukuk market is guided by the ethical framework of Islamic finance, particularly Markets Malaysia, which emphasize justice, risk-sharing, transparency and public interest. Sukuk avoids riba and excessive uncertainty, and financing is linked to real economic assets including infrastructure, renewable energy and ESG-based projects. So, what does the Bank Negara Malaysia known as BNM do? As the central bank, they play a critical role in ensuring monetary and financial stability within the Islamic banking system. It regulates Islamic financial institutions and for Sharia governance frameworks and issues Sharia compliant liquidity instruments such as MGII and BNMNI. Through this role, BNM integrates Sukuk into the core financial system, allowing Islamic banks to manage liquidity and mitigate risk. This supports financial stability and aligns with Maqasid al-Sharia, particularly hifz al-mal, by protecting wealth and reducing systemic risk. On the other hand, the Securities Commission Malaysia focused on capital market development, investor protection and innovation. The SC regulates Sukuk issuance and disclosure. This requires Sharia Advisory Council endorsement for Sukuk products and standardized structures such as Ijarah, Musyarakah, Mudarabah, Wakalah and Hybrid Sukuk. This Sharia certainty reduces legal and compliance risks, thereby enhancing investor confidence, especially among international and conventional institutional investors. In comparison, Malaysia's success does not come from overlapping regulation but from strong complementarity. BNM ensures systemic resilience and liquidity, while the SC drives issue transparency and innovation. Together, they form a cohesive regulatory framework that underpins Malaysia's leadership in the global Sukuk market.
Next is the government as a single most important catalyst for Sukuk market growth. While private sector participation has contributed to the market depth, the Malaysian government's direct involvement as a sovereign Sukuk issuer has been the single most important catalyst in the market's development. The issuance of sovereign Sukuk, particularly the landmark global Sukuk in the early 2000s, established a risk-free benchmark yield curve for ringgit-denominated Sukuk. This benchmark was essential for accurate pricing of corporate Sukuk and significantly reduced information asymmetry for investors. Without such reference point, private issuers would have faced higher issuance costs and weaker investor demand. More importantly, government issuance signals strong political commitment and regulatory certainty, which private sector initiatives alone could not provide during the early stages of market development. At that time, legal enforceability, asset ownership, structure, and Sharia interpretation risks discouraged private issuers. Government leadership mitigates these concerns, effectively crowding in private participation rather than crowding it out. In addition, the government pioneers innovative Sukuk structures, including global Sukuk Wakalah and green Sukuk, setting precedents that the private sector later adopted. This demonstrates that innovation in Malaysia's Sukuk market has largely been state-led, with private issuers responding once credibility, liquidity, and investors' confidence were firmly established. So this bar chart provides empirical evidence that Malaysia's leadership in the global Sukuk market is not accidental, but the outcome of consistent sovereign issuance, which anchored the market and enabled private sector growth. According to the recent Global Sukuk Market Report by Fitch Ratings, Malaysia accounts for around 40% of all outstanding Sukuk worldwide, followed by Saudi Arabia with 28%, Indonesia with 30%, and the UAE at about 6%. This clearly shows that Malaysia's dominant position in the Sukuk issuance and supports our argument that government issuance has been fundamental to market development. So the critical evaluation. Although private sector's initiatives are essential long-term market sustainability, they were insufficient on their own to create a mature Sukuk market. The Malaysian experience shows that government issuance acted as the anchor, providing benchmarks, legitimacy, and market confidence. Private sector growth followed as the consequence of this foundation. Therefore, Malaysia's Sukuk success is best understood as a state-enabled market, where regulatory strength and sovereign leadership created conditions under which private innovation could flourish. This model distinguishes Malaysia from the other jurisdictions where Sukuk markets remain fragmented or under development.
Next, we move to question 2. From niche to mainstream, the role of financial innovation. The first one is evaluation of Sukuk structure in Malaysia. Malaysia's Sukuk market did not develop quickly. It grew step by step as the market became more mature. In the early 1990s, Malaysia mainly used Sukuk Ijarah, this type of Sukuk based on leasing. It is simple, asset-backed, and easy to understand. Because of this, it's helped build early investor confidence. In the 2000s, the market became more advanced. Malaysia then introduced risk-sharing Sukuk such as Musyarakah and Mudarabah. This Sukuk focus on profit and loss sharing. This reflects Islamic finance values and support fairness under Maqasid al-Sharia. From 2010 onward, Malaysia used more flexible and hybrid structure, especially Sukuk Wakalah. This Sukuk combine more than one Sharia contract. They also support new products like green, sustainable, and ESG Sukuk. Because of this continuous innovation, Sukuk in Malaysia changed. It moved from a small Islamic product to a major financial instrument. Today, Sukuk is used by both Islamic and conventional investors.
Next, I will explain an example of financial innovation in Malaysia's Sukuk market, which is the Green and Sustainable and Responsible Investment or SRI Sukuk. In terms of structure, Green and SRI Sukuk are designed so that the fund raised are channeled directly into projects that provide clear environmental or social benefits. These projects commonly include renewable energy initiatives such as solar or wind power, as well as sustainable infrastructure developments. An important feature of this sukuk is that they are supported by clearly identifiable underlying assets or projects. This reduces uncertainty or gharar and ensures transparency is how the funds are used. From a Sharia compliance perspective, Green and SRI Sukuk fully adhere to Islamic financial principles. They do not involve any interest-based returns, and the financing is structured on an asset-backed or asset-based basis. Returns to investors are generated through permissible profit mechanisms, while risks are shared between the parties involved. This structure aligns closely with the objective of Maqasid al-Sharia, particularly in promoting social welfare and protecting the environment, which are increasingly important in today's global financial system. In terms of market impact, the introduction of Green and SRI Sukuk has significantly broadened the appeal of Sukuk. These instruments attract ESG-focused conventional investors who may not traditionally invest in Islamic finance. As a result, Sukuk are no longer viewed as a niche product limited to religious considerations, but rather as credible global instruments for sustainable finance. This development has expanded the investor base and strengthened Malaysia's position as leader in innovative Sukuk issuance.
For Malaysia to remain the global leader in the Sukuk market, it is no longer enough to live only in insurance volume. Over the next decade, Malaysia must strengthen its role as a global standard setter, particularly in regulatory and Sharia harmonization, to support cross-border Sukuk growth. The first strategy that Malaysia can do in regulatory and Sharia harmonization is align with global Islamic finance standard. At present, Malaysia already has a strong Sharia and regulatory framework. However, differences still exist between Malaysia standards and those applied in GCC countries and Indonesia. By further aligning with international bodies such as IFSB and AAOIFI, Malaysia can reduce Sharia interpretation gaps and ensure that Sukuk structured in Malaysia are more widely accepted by global investors. Next, develop a global core Sukuk framework. To further reduce complexity, Malaysia can champion the development of global core Sukuk framework. This framework will establish minimum standard on asset backing, risk sharing, disclosure, and legal impossibility. Importantly, it will not replace domestic Sharia authority, but provide a shared baseline that improves consistency across markets. The third one is Malaysia can reduce cross-border legal uncertainty. One of the key concerns for international investors is legal uncertainty, especially in cross-border Sukuk. Malaysia can address this by promoting standardized legal documentation and clearer treatment of asset ownership and investor rights. This reduces ambiguity, lowers legal risk, and strengthens investor confidence in Malaysian issuing Sukuk. And for the last strategy is strengthen Sharia governance and transparency. Strong Sharia governance is critical for maintaining trust in Sukuk market. Malaysia should continue enhancing transparency through clearer disclosure of Sharia rulings and ongoing compliance monitoring. This helps mitigate Sharia non-compliance risks and further strengthens Malaysia's reputation for credibility and governance.
The other recommendation is developing new market for specific Sukuk types in order to strengthen the Sukuk ecosystem and attract a broader range of investors. First, it highlights the importance of expanding the green and ESG-linked Sukuk market. Green Sukuk finance projects such as renewable energy, climate resilience, infrastructure, and low carbon development. This Sukuk appeals strongly to global sustainable finance investors. Successful examples include Indonesia's repeated sovereign green Sukuk issuance and the UAE's corporate green Sukuk. To further grow this market, Sukuk framework should be aligned with the international ESG standard to enhance transparency and investor confidence. Other than that, we can also strengthen cross-border market accessibility. Clearer legal documentation, standardized Sharia structures, and improved disclosure practice can reduce uncertainty for foreign investors. This will make Sukuk easier to understand, encourage international participation, and improve global market integration. Other than that, there is also introduced agriculture and food security Sukuk, which remain undeveloped but have strong potential. This Sukuk can support halal food production, agricultural infrastructure, and supply chain improvements, particularly in some countries with strong agribusiness sectors. Standardized agriculture Sukuk framework will help ensure consistency and investor trust. Last but not least, education and human capital Sukuk are proposed as specialized form of social Sukuk. This Sukuk can finance universities, technical training institutes, and digital education infrastructure. They align with responsible investment goals and are attractive to a long-term investor and multilateral institutions focused on sustainable development. In conclusion, expanding Sukuk into green, agricultural, and education sector while improving cross-border accessibility can promote sustainable inclusive and globally competitive Islamic finance.